Think about the last thing you ate. Maybe it was something simple. Toast, an egg, leftovers reheated from the night before. You didn't think twice about it. You applied heat to food, waited a few minutes, and ate something that your body could immediately use. That process is so ordinary, it barely registers as a decision. But what you just did, or what someone did before you, is one of the most consequential acts in the entire history of your species. It changed your brain. It changed your face. It changed how long you live, how much you sleep, how social you are, and how different you are from every other creature on this planet. And the real reason it started has almost nothing to do with taste. Let's go back, far back. About 1.9 million years ago, something remarkable happened in the fossil record. The genus Homo, your distant ancestor, began changing in a way that was unlike anything that had come before. The jaw got smaller. The teeth got shorter and less sharp. The digestive tract shrank. The skull expanded dramatically. And brain size increased by nearly 50% over a relatively short geological window. Evolutionary biologists had long assumed these changes happened slowly, driven by random genetic drift. But in 1999, Harvard Primatologist Richard Wrangham published a theory that reframed everything. He called it the cooking hypothesis. Wrangham's argument was simple but radical. Cooking didn't follow the big brain. Cooking caused it. Here's the logic. Raw food, even raw meat, requires an enormous amount of energy to digest. Your gut has to work for hours, breaking down tough fibers, hard starches, resistant proteins. That process burns calories. A significant portion of the energy you get from raw food goes right back into the mechanical and chemical effort of processing it. Your body is essentially running a factory that consumes much of what it produces. Cooking changes this equation completely. Heat breaks down the cellular walls of plants. It denatures proteins in meat, making them easier for digestive enzymes to access. It destroys natural toxins in certain foods. It gelatinizes starches, converting them from forms the body can barely absorb into forms it can process with startling efficiency. In short, cooking pre-digests food before it ever enters your mouth. Wrangham and his colleagues estimated that cooking increases the caloric yield of food by anywhere from 30 to 100%, depending on the food type. You get dramatically more energy from a cooked potato than a raw one. You extract significantly more protein from cooked meat than raw, and you do it with far less digestive effort. This was an energy revolution, and energy is everything in evolution. When your ancestors began reliably cooking food, and researchers believe the earliest controlled use of fire for cooking dates to roughly 1 million years ago, with some evidence suggesting even earlier in sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, the freed up energy had to go somewhere. The gut, no longer needing to be a massive industrial processor, could shrink. Digestion became faster and more efficient, and the brain, the most energy-expensive organ in the human body, consuming roughly 20% of your total caloric intake, could afford to grow. Neuroscientist Suzana Herculano-Houzel at Vanderbilt University ran the numbers and found something startling. A primate trying to grow a human-sized brain while eating only raw food would need to spend approximately 9 hours a day eating. 9 hours, just to fuel the neural tissue. There aren't enough daylight hours to do anything else. Raw food, she argued, creates an evolutionary ceiling on brain size. Cooking smashed through that ceiling. But the cooking hypothesis isn't just about calories and brain size. It reaches into your social life. Fire had to be maintained. Raw ingredients had to be gathered and brought back. Food had to be shared. The act of cooking around a fire created something that had not existed before in the animal kingdom. A fixed point in time and space where members of a group came together every single day for a shared purpose. Anthropologist Polly Wiessner at the University of Utah studied the Jahwansi people of the Kalahari, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer societies, and documented how daytime interactions were dominated by practical, task-focused communication, economic exchanges, conflict resolution, work. But nighttime, firelight time, was different. Around the fire, the conversation shifted. Stories were told. Social bonds were formed and reinforced. Cultural knowledge was passed between generations. Wiessner found that 81% of daytime talk was practical and economic. Around the fire at night, 81% of conversation was stories about people, relationships, distant places, imagined futures. The campfire didn't just cook food, it cooked culture. And then there is something even stranger, something that reaches directly into your daily life in a way you probably haven't considered. Cooking made you trust other people. When you eat food prepared by someone else, you are placing an extraordinary degree of trust in that person. You cannot see what was done to the food. You cannot always detect tampering or contamination. Eating prepared food is an act of radical vulnerability. And yet humans do it constantly, with family members, with strangers in restaurants, with food manufacturers they have never met. Evolutionary anthropologist John Allen at the University of Southern California argues that this trust co-evolved with cooking. The social bonds formed around shared meals became one of the primary mechanisms through which early humans evaluated and extended trust. To eat with someone was to signal safety. To cook for someone was to demonstrate care. The meal became a social contract. This is why food plays such a central role in almost every human culture's rituals around birth, death, marriage, and celebration. The meal is not decoration. The meal is the mechanism. Consider what all of this means. Your brain, the structure that houses your identity, your memories, your capacity for language and abstract thought and creativity, grew to its current extraordinary size in significant part because your ancestors learned to apply heat to food. The neurons firing as you read these words are in a very real sense a consequence of a fire lit by a creature who could not have imagined what those neurons would one day produce. And the social life you live, the relationships you maintain, the trust you extend, the stories you tell at dinner tables and around campfires and in late-night kitchens, is built on a foundation laid by those same fires. Wrangham once noted that cooking is the one behavior that is universal across every known human culture, without exception. Every human society that has ever been documented, regardless of geography, language, or belief system, cooks its food. No other animal does, not even our closest primate relatives, who share 98% of our DNA. That gap, that 2%, produced the brain. The brain produced language, tools, art, civilization, and the capacity to ask why any of this happened. And the fire produced the brain. Think again about the last thing you ate. The heat that touched your food is the same force that shaped your mind, older than any language you could use to describe it, more consequential than any single decision your ancestors ever made, and so ordinary now that you didn't even notice it happening. You cooked something, or someone did it for you. And that, in the end, is exactly the point.